In the paraphrased words of St. Catherine of Siena, love follows the intellect, and the more the soul knows, the more it can love. Thus the one feeds the other, and with this light they both arrive at the eternal vision of God. In other words, as your knowledge of God grows, your love of God also grows. While there are many things about God that we as humans can never fully understand, that does not mean we are prevented from pursuing deeper knowledge of God. Because God is love, continually seeking to better understand God can only result in loving God more. Think about the last time you were interested in someone. Odds are, from the first moment you developed that hint of affection for them, you found yourself wanting to know everything about them, from their biggest dreams to the tiniest detail, like how they drink their coffee. Maybe you even searched their name online or stalked their social media profiles. While this level of obsession comes more from infatuation than love, it speaks to the idea that when we feel drawn to someone, we naturally want to know all that we can about them. And hopefully, as you start to really learn more about someone on a deep personal level, the connection and love you have for them will also grow. In a similar vein, wishing to learn more about God is both healthy and necessary if you intend to deepen your faith and grow closer to Him. We can never know all there is to know about God because He is in existence far beyond our own. That said, we as individuals don't know all we are able to comprehend about God the moment we're baptized. Like any other relationship, it takes time and effort for us to get to know Him, even though He already knows everything about us. Scripture tells us that we need to come to God as a child would in order to come to the kingdom of heaven. The temptation, I think, is to read that and conclude that it's okay or even mandatory to have a faith that doesn't ask questions. However, a childlike faith is not the same thing as an immature faith. Think about any young kids you know. Do any of them not ask questions? My oldest nephew is currently 7 years old. And within the past few months, he's asked me, how many zeros are in a trillion? How do elevators work? How tall is a rocket ship? Is that building as tall as a rocket ship? What would we need to build a roller coaster in your backyard? And much more. Generally, kids ask tons of questions because they want to know more about the world around them. The key thing is that they ask from the perspective of someone who accepts the reality rather than someone who doubts it. They're not trying to prove you wrong. They're just fascinated by the world and want to understand it better. In the same way, when we ask questions about God and about the teachings of the church, it's much more productive for us to ask in a way that seeks clarification instead of going into the process assuming we already know it all. Think back to Zechariah and Mary. Zechariah doubts the message of the angel, asking, "How shall I know this?" The words of God's messenger are not enough for him to trust the accuracy of the message because his own base of knowledge seems to refute the possibility that it could be true. As a result, he's struck mute until after John is born. On the other hand, Mary asks the angel, "How can this be?" She wanted to understand what was happening, but she didn't doubt the truth of the angel's message or the will of God. So Mary's question was simply met with an answer. My challenge to you this week is to seek an answer to a spiritual question you have. Start by addressing a pet sin, a sin you cling to by telling yourself that it's not really so bad. If you've caught yourself saying, "At least I'm not doing such and such," or "the church is just outdated about this," well, there's a good chance the behavior you've said that about might be your pet sin. It's important to understand these beliefs because they act as obstacles in our relationship with God. So as difficult as I know this can be, research the reasons why the church concludes that it's a sin. Read or listen to or watch some analytical pieces explaining how the scripture or law prohibiting it is actually to your benefit, because ultimately God's laws are always to our benefit. Pet sins are wolves and lions we keep while telling ourselves that they're only dogs and cats. Denying their nature does not change it, so it's important to know what you're actually dealing with. Alternatively, if there's an element of church tradition or teaching that you've never quite understood, you could make that your question. For instance, if you're Catholic and you don't understand why we believe in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, the Immaculate Conception of Mary, and so forth, do some research to find out why. Many of these things are mysteries in the sense that we can never fully understand how they work. But there are reasons supporting each and every one of these beliefs, and those reasons are within our understanding. Even if you may not gain the full picture, it's still good practice to grasp as much of it as you can because you're deepening your understanding of God and His church. No matter which approach you take, when you do your research, remember to try going into it by asking, how can this be, instead of how shall I know this? In other words, take the matter on faith and look for an answer instead of trying to dispute a doctrine you don't like. Seek solid Catholic resources with a reputation for defending the faith instead of those known to compromise with the ways of the world, and check a few against each other for accuracy and further clarification. And throughout your research, make sure you're also praying that God would direct you and open your mind and heart to His truth.